Hello and welcome to the Green 19 podcast. I'm Dominique Yates, joined as always by my colleagues Ryan Wood and Tom Silverstein. Just a few days before we head to Detroit, the Packers are playing on the Detroit Lions at Ford Field. Should be a big game, a highly anticipated matchup, part two of this divisional showdown between these two teams. And I guess as we jump into the game, and Ryan, I'll start with you. Even after the first matchup, I guess about a month or so ago, the Packers came away with that game feeling like they just left a lot on the table. And adding that with the fact of how they've been playing as of late, you would think they would be confident going into this game. But I get the sense that it really started last year with this team, that they really felt like they stood toe-to-toe with, one of the best teams in the NFC and in the NFL. Do you kind of get that same sense?
Yeah, I think what happened on Thanksgiving last year in Detroit was really the springboard to everything that's followed. A week later, they backed that up with beating Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City Chiefs at home, and that was a solidifier. That was a proof and evidence that what happened in Thanksgiving in Detroit was not a fluke. But that was, to me, the genesis. And they won a week earlier against Justin Herbert and the Chargers at home. So, but they needed that breakout performance in that environment, spoiling Thanksgiving for the Lions. And the Lions could not have been more psyched for that game coming in, because they hadn't been good in eons, and they knew they were at that point. They knew that they were a team to be reckoned with. They had the Packers, of all teams, on their home field on Thanksgiving, and they wanted to send a statement, and instead it was the Packers that sent a statement that day, 29-22. I think that you can almost draw a line of demarcation before that game and after that game. Before that game, these Packers were the youngest team in the NFL, a ton of potential, had not realized it yet. It was 3 months into the season, and they just needed that type of statement game. After, they knew who they were. They started to understand, okay, there's real talent here that can go toe-to-toe with anybody, and they win their last 3 regular season games last year. They go to the divisional round, 3 points from the NFC Championship game, and now they're 9-3. And it's an entirely different thing. Now, what's interesting is that they're 9-3, but they're still third in the NFC North, right? So it's, the landscape hasn't changed, but this team and its internal belief very much has, and I think it started there in Detroit. So here's another opportunity to go in against a great Lions team, just a really stacked Lions team that is, not the whole of their parts, because they're injured. I mean, there's injuries all up and down that roster, but they just keep continuing to win anyway.
It's funny to hear you say that, so I just want to take it from here. I saw a tweet this morning from Phil Yates, no relation. He said the 9-3 Packers would be in first place in the NFC South by 3 games, in the NFC West by 2 games, and in the AFC South by 1.5 games. They're third in the NFC North, showing it loaded division.
Well, I wrote about that today. There's only 3 divisions in football other than the NFC North where at 9-3 the Packers wouldn't at least have in the win column be tied atop the standings. That's the AFC East, 10-2 Buffalo Bills. That's the 11-1 Kansas City Chiefs, and that's the 10-2 Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC East. But here's what blows my mind. You look at the divisional standings, and you just look at third place in each division and just take the win total, okay? We're starting with the AFC East, working our way down. The win total for third place in each division: 3 Jets, 4 Bengals, 3 Titans, 7 Broncos, 5 Cowboys, 9 Packers, 4 Saints, 6 Rams. One of these is not like the other. It's incredible how stacked this division is.
It really is. And then when you get into this game, Spoon, with the Lions, just when you look at Detroit and the number of injuries that they've had, I think they've lost like 8 different guys on that front 7, and they've just been, really banged up. They lost like 3 just from the Chicago Bears game, including, Josh Pascal. They've lost Malcolm Rodriguez. Does it make it, a little more difficult to figure out what maybe could come with the Detroit Lions throughout, the rest of this regular season and into the playoffs because of just all the number of injuries?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, the Packers, the roles are kind of reversed from last year. The Packers were the beat-up team going into Detroit last year. They had like 17 guys on the injury report, and I think 6 guys didn't play, and 4 or 5 of them were starters, and they still won. And I don't know that, the one thing about Detroit is their offense hasn't been affected by all the injuries. It's been only their defense. And so they have just been destroying teams with their offense, with the one exception when Goff threw 5 interceptions. I think they can continue to roll, and they may get healthier. The biggest loss, of course, was Aiden Hutchinson. Right. But they still have their 2 safeties. They still have their best linebacker, Jack Campbell. They still have a few guys up front. They got Zadarius Smith. I don't see them fading away, but they could be vulnerable. Yeah. There's no question they could be vulnerable. For the Packers, they may have this 9-3 record, but who have the most signature wins or the wins that were probably the most important that they needed: Philadelphia, Minnesota, Detroit. And they lost all 3 of those games. So they really have to have a win in this type of game, because it's great to be 9-3, but you got to be able to beat your top competition getting ready for the playoffs. And so they haven't really done that yet. They've beaten the teams that are on their schedule, and that's what you ask for. Mm-hmm. But these are 3 of the best teams in the NFC, and they haven't beaten them yet.
Yeah, which is why I'm really interested to see the second half of the season, just because of how the Packers are playing, especially, these past couple of games, even, with the 49ers, banged up team or not, they still were able to play well. And then Miami, they really controlled that game. So I don't know, is it safe to say this is maybe as good a time as any for the Packers to try to get that second shot at Detroit?
I think that's the best they've been playing all season. And it always starts with the quarterback. The Packers' defense comes into this game with quite a bit of confidence because it held this Lions high-potent offense to 17 points, and that's the second fewest points the Lions have scored all season, the fewest since Week 2 when they put up only 16 in a loss to the Bucs, their only loss of the year, and that was at Detroit. 17 points on this offense. Xavier McKinney was asked yesterday, are you guys better prepared to go against this Lions offense than you were the first time? He's like, I thought we did pretty good the first time. And he's right. Like they did pretty good against a really good offense the first time. That entire game swung on one play, right? It was 10-3 late in the half. The Packers are in 2-minute drill, trying to put a field goal up on the board to cut the lead. And if it go in 10-6 at halftime, who knows what happens. Instead, Jordan Love, who was not healthy at the time, he's much healthier now. His legs are feeling much better. Trying to get out of the pocket, make a play when he should have just aborted, should have thrown the ball away. It was second down and short. And he tries to throw a check down to Josh Jacobs and Kirby Joseph. Doesn't see him. The ball goes there, pick 6, and all of a sudden it's 17-3. Good teams make those plays. Take nothing away from the Lions, but that was without question a single play game changer that, you look at how Jordan Love's playing these past few weeks, back-to-back games without a pick. First time all year. He's healthy. He's getting out of the pocket better, a lot more under center snap exchanges. He is playing his best so far this season. And it's very similar to what he did last year, where it took midway through the year, and then he just had this meteoric rise. Not to say that it continues. It needs to continue in Detroit. But I do think that this is the right time. This Packers team is playing its best. This quarterback is playing his best.
Along those same lines, Boone, do you feel like you can say a little bit closer to matching up with Detroit this time around?
Well, yeah, Love is certainly the difference between where they were then. But, in that game, too, going back and looking at it, they still, even with that interception, had a chance, but they made so many errors. They dropped, a half dozen passes. They jumped off sides and gave the Lions a second chance at a touchdown. They had false starts, penalties. They did a lot of things wrong in that game, and that's how you gain 411 yards or whatever it was, and only score 14 points. Right. They just couldn't, step over themselves. They kept tripping all over themselves, and that's not to take away what Detroit did. It it sort of highlighted what they have to get rid of. And some of those things are still an issue. You know, the offside stuff is still an issue. The drops are better, but still an issue. And all those things they got to clean up on Thursday. I mean, if they really want to win and win decidedly, those things have to be cleaned up.
You know what I remember saying immediately after that game on this podcast is the Packers didn't lose because they weren't good enough to beat them, right? It wasn't a talent thing. They have the talent to go up against the Lions, or really anyone, but specifically they have the talent to go up against the Lions and beat them, whether it's Ford Field, Lambeau Field, doesn't matter. They have the talent. The question is, do they have the execution that comes from being seasoned, being experienced? The Lions are a more experienced team. They have more age, more experience on their roster. And in games like this, that's where you have to be able to play up to that level. That's what we don't know, I think, is whether the Packers can. It's not a talent thing. They have the talent to beat the Lions. I don't know if they have the execution to do that.
Yeah. I guess if there is another bright spot for the Packers heading into this game, from a health standpoint, we just talked about the Lions and how banged up they are, but for the Packers, for the most part, they've still been in overall good health, and I guess there's a
great health.
Yeah, really good.
I mean, over the top health.
Which is it's night and day different from last year.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, last year or this year, I think their starters, I just did the math on it, but their starters have missed a total of 7 games, which is phenomenal.
Incredible.
Yes, it is.
And last year, going into the Lions game, they had missed 34. Wow. So, and the Lions were the exact opposite. The Lions were the healthiest team in the NFL. They were pretty much like the Packers when those two teams faced off. And they wound up being one of the healthiest teams, and they almost made it to the Super Bowl. So health matters.
Yeah.
And it'll be, it's something to watch if Packers continue to stay healthy. Every team's going to have attrition, Oftentimes it is the healthiest team that ends up winning.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But, yeah, they are in so much better shape. And then, as you were alluding to, they got a chance to get Jair Alexander back. And Romeo Doubs, it looks like, should be back. I don't think Edgerrin Cooper's going to be back. Doesn't look like it.
Yeah.
But those are two guys who've missed a little bit of time. Alexander more than anybody else.
Did you do the math on the Lions by chance?
I did, yeah.
How many games have their starters missed?
So their starters, gosh, I wish I had my notes with me. My memory's so bad. It's in my story today. I had it like their defensive players had missed like 60 games, I think, total.
Jeez.
If you just took everybody who's missed games,
wow,
it's ridiculous.
Oh, my God.
It is ridiculous.
And so, you're talking about guys, starters who are on IR, Marcus Davenport, Alex Anzalone, one of their linebackers, he's on IR. Emmanuel Mosley was supposed to be one of their corners.
I think Malcolm Rodriguez just went out.
Malcolm Rodriguez, and he's a backup. So they're backup to their starter.
That's how bad it is.
The kid, the other linebacker, their starting linebacker, Barnes, has missed practically the whole year. And so Rodriguez was his backup. And, so anyway, yeah, they're beat up on defense. The Packers have to take advantage of that. I mean, up front, they got to win big.
You know what you're telling me? The Packers have no excuse to lose this game. Like, you have everything you could possibly want. The playing field is not even here. It is a tilted playing field to them. There is no excuse, and I get it. The Lions were my preseason pick to represent the NFC at the Super Bowl. I do believe they're the best team in the NFC. They've shown that.
I do too.
But there's no excuse to lose this game. None.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the one thing that kind of stands out to me and stands in their way is the lack of pass rush. And when they played Detroit in Detroit last year, they really got after Goff. I think it caused a couple fumbles. They
Rashawn
sacked
Gary.
him. Yeah. Carl Brooks caused one. They were all over him. And I don't know. I don't know if they can do that there, with the noise I don't know if Taylor Decker, their left tackle, is going to start. I think he is, but that'll be something to watch as well. They got to win. They got to win that,
Yeah. So that's one thing I'm looking at just in terms of just stacking up. So I do want to look at the Packers offense against the Lions defense, talk a little bit more about that, and I'll start with you, Spoon. Because, they still got Kirby Joseph, but because of that front seven and how decimated it's been, is this another week of run the ball if you're Green Bay?
Yeah, yes and no. So, yes, you want to try to take advantage of that front four. They still have Lee McNeil, who is a bad dude, and Pascal, I don't think has been ruled out. I'm not sure.
Not yet, yeah.
But yeah, I think you got to try to do that. On the other hand, the Packers are are most dangerous as a passing team when they play indoors. They are just, they got the speed on turf with all those guys. Wicks, Reed had a huge game against the Lions last year. He had a huge game against them here,
Yeah.
And I think you can't just say they're going to hand the ball off to Jacobs. I think they gotta get their passing game going too.
Yeah. For you, Ryan, just what are you looking for from this Packers offense just heading into this game?
Yeah, if you repeat the formula of last season, you're looking at Jordan Love just hitting a lot of easy completions with high efficiency and moving the ball up and down the field. And I agree with Spoon that when they play indoors on the fast track, this offense, the passing game can really go. I also think, though, Josh Jacobs had 95 yards on 13 carries against the Lions at Lambeau Field. And that is the identity of this offense. Zach Tom told me point blank, well, that's our identity. We found that. We want to run the ball, especially in the red zone, where Josh Jacobs has 4 one-yard touchdowns in the last 2 games and has really kind of single-handedly changed the fortunes inside the 20. When you look at a high-scoring offense like the Lions, the best tonic is to keep them off the field. In the run game, especially a running back like Josh Jacobs, who can be a ball control back that can chew up time, stay on schedule. I think that it'd be doing a disservice to the roster as a whole, especially that defense, if you just came in trying to fling the ball all across the yard. There has to be that balance. There has to be a bedrock of the run game and build everything off that play action. Those plays will be there, but I do think it still starts with the run.
Going back to just thinking with Jordan Love when he talked yesterday, it's always kind of interesting sometimes with his comments and his demeanor and sometimes with certain answers. And he was asked about, if you think like this is kind of your last chance to play for that division title or try to compete for it. And it was like a pretty quick, yeah, we know we just got to be ready to play. So, I wonder, I guess, could you ever get the sense of what he's feeling going into this game? You had an idea from the 49ers. Like, he knew that he wanted that game back. Then you look at Detroit. I guess I'm really curious about, just his feelings getting ready for a game like this.
It's hard to say because his answer, I thought, was kind of dismissive.
Yeah.
Right? It was just, it wasn't – not that there's anything wrong with that. That means he's got the tunnel vision on and he's focused on the game. But the reality is that this is their last chance. They lose this game, the NFC North crown is over. But if they win this game, they're very much in the hunt. The Lions have the Bills next week. They have a harder schedule down the stretch than the Packers do. If they win this game, I think they are very much in the NFC North hunt. I think they are a better team than the Minnesota Vikings, who just continue to pull it out of places I'm not going to talk about.
I'm not going to bleep you. I don't have a bleeper. Yeah.
To win games each and every week that look like, how'd they win that game? Every single week, they just find a way to do it. Which, hey, give them credit, but it's also like we've seen this from Minnesota in the past. It reminds me a couple years ago where they won the NFC North and they hosted the New York Giants and Daniel Jones in the wild card or the first round, and they lost. So I think the Packers are better than the Vikings. They have to go to Minnesota later this year and prove it. The question is, okay, can you take care of the Lions on their home field? That we don't know, but if they do, I think they have a very legitimate shot at the division title. If not, it's over.
Since you say that, it's so hard to say, but with those top 3 teams in the NFC North, with the Lions, Vikings, Packers. Do you think that it might kind of end as is with 1, 2, 3 Lions, Minnesota, or do you think the Packers maybe could
that's
jump?
That's why they play them, man. I mean, if I was good at predictions, I'd be in Vegas living the high life.
That does sound nice.
It
does sound nice.
To not have to just be able to go home after the game, and
I'd love to be in Vegas.
Drown my sorrows or celebrate. We'll find out.
Yeah,
I mean, it's going to play out. The Lions on paper are still the best team until someone knocks them off, and really knocks them off. Then they are by far the best team in the in the NFC. But you're seeing teams start to jockey now. Philadelphia is on a roll. Mm-hmm. I mean, they are kicking butt, and I'm not sure anybody has an answer for Saquon Barkley at this point. And, now their defense is starting to come around. Cooper DeJean's having a monster.
There's that name.
Start. Yeah, first guy I've ever seen just put Derrick Henry on his back.
That was incredible.
It really was. I mean, Brian Gutekunst has to be sick to his stomach right now. Imagine him on this defense, what a difference that would make. What's going to be really interesting to me is how do the Packers defend the Lions? Where is Halfleaf's defense at this juncture of the year? I mean, if they're going to do anything special, now would be the time. This is probably the hardest offense to defend just because they can run it down your throat at any time they want, pretty much, with two opposite backs, a power back, a speed back. Then they got, a play action quarterback and a great tight end and a, Pro Bowl receiver and another receiver who's kind of a nutcase, but when he's on, he's speedy as heck. So how do you defend all that? That's what I want to see. I want to see Halfley come up with a game plan that, say what you will, Joe Barry had a great game plan for the Lions last year, and they took away everything that the Lions really wanted. The Lions made a strong rally at the end, but he knew what to do, and so I want to see Halfley come up with that plan. 2 words:
pass rush. It's easy to look like you have a great game plan when Rashawn Gary's wrecking a game with 3 sacks as he did last year, right? You can't let this Lions offense be comfortable because they will kill you if they're comfortable. You have to get the pass rush. We've seen signs that the defensive ends are being at least more productive in the past couple games. Lucas Van Ness, back-to-back games with a sack. Rashawn Gary starting to put some sacks on the board. But Kenny Clark got his first one. Kenny Clark got his first sack. Wow. Because of Quay Walker, right? Because Quay Walker from the Mike linebacker positions played his 2 best games. And when Quay Walker's at his best, it's the pass rush. He can be a dynamic pass rusher from lining up off the ball. It's got to be more, though. Like, can they continue this and then take another step? I think it'd be very curious to see, does Jeff Halfley continue to try to milk that defensive line, maybe sprinkle in some Quay Walker, or does he go with more simulated pressures as we've seen from time to time this season, especially against the Texans? And just whatever you do, you have to get after Jared Goff. It starts there. Everything emanates from there. And then if you do, does Jared Goff do what he didn't really do last time? That's throw deep, right? He didn't test Xavier McKinney because he didn't have to. He had all this underneath stuff, and he was just highly efficient. If you get him uncomfortable, does Jared Goff throw deep? Does Xavier McKinney have some opportunities to make plays? That all links together, but it starts with pass rush.
One thing about this game, I'm thinking it could get a little spicy on Thursday. Mm-hmm. Tucker Kraft, you hear his comments about
sure did.
Who was he talking about? Kirby Joseph. Who was he? I forgot who he was talking about.
Sure
was it Kirby Joseph? And Joseph has had his share of moments playing a little physical and rough. And I don't know. Are you pulling up the quote?
I got the quote.
How about you just read it off? You don't have to do like your Tucker Kraft impression or voice.
Oh, I couldn't do that.
I know, right? You just have to be
He's
very
a
intense.
Talker. I'm not that smooth of a talker.
I understand what he was saying about Kirby Joseph, but a lot of his reputation came from that hit on Tyler Higbee, and Matthew Stafford called him a dirty player. And I think he got a big reputation off of that. Now he's had a few penalties and some lower hits. You mentioned the one against Dobbs. His rookie year knocked him out for a week or two.
Which I thought was a dirty hit. I don't know what you thought of that.
It was low. It was at the ankles. Like, it was kind of unnecessary.
Blind?
It wasn't. I don't think he got fined for it. I can't remember. I went back and actually looked to see how many times he's been fined, and it hasn't been that many times. Like, Brian Branch has been fined way more than Kirby Joseph has, which I'm surprised they didn't mention him because he got kicked out of the game in the last one for that hit on Bo Melton, was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be quite feisty.
Yeah.
I think there'll be tons of talking, and especially if Alexander plays, there'll be and him and Amon-Ra St. Brown loves to talk, and Jamison Williams, man, they got to get him to do what he did last week, which is throw the ball in Tyreek Stevenson's face and get a 15-yard penalty.
Yeah.
So
that is something that's going to be interesting too, because there's been a lot of that, and even Dan Campbell has had comments about it. Like, these guys get a little feisty. There's a lot of those unnecessary penalties. Like, again, if you're Green Bay and you want to play a clean football game, you can't get caught up in that. Like, you can't afford to get flag after flag for just stuff that has nothing even to do that goes on with the game. So that's going to be interesting how, you come out physical and fired up, but is it in between the whistles?
Well, it's not played up much, but the Packers are a bunch of trash talkers. They're trash talkers.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
They don't. You see it some, but it's not. We definitely haven't written about it. Maybe we should, but they do have some primo trash talkers.
I like your idea. In fact, that's been in my head for today. So read that on Packers News. But here's the quote.
Go ahead.
All right, and to your point, the word that comes to mind about this team, that they don't just trash talk on the field; they trash talk in the locker room too.
Yeah,
they're brash. This is a brash team. Tucker Kraft was merely asked what he thought about Kirby Joseph, who is going to be a first-team All-Pro alongside Xavier McKinney this season. I mean, those are your first-team All-Pro safeties. Kirby Joseph, Xavier McKinney. What do you think of Kirby Joseph? Tucker Kraft said, he's a respectable player in the NFC, but in my mind, I'm not really worried about DBs too often. I'm worried more about the guys in the box, and I'm sure they bring guys down, safety rotation, and we target them in the run. But it's just a different game. Here's the teeth of it. I don't have too many tidbits on Kirby. I know he's a dangerous player. He can flip games. He's a good DB. I might not agree with some of the places he likes to lay contact. He's taken some of my brothers out of the game, and I think about that too. So if I get a chance to get my hands on him, playing football. What stood out to me about that, Spoon, is what the hit on Tyler Higbee. Some of my brothers, tight end is a fraternity in this league. Mm-hmm. Tucker Kraft wasn't here when Kirby Joseph took out Romeo Dobbs. That was the year before he got here. I think he's thinking exactly about some of my brothers, some of my tight ends in this league, Tyler Higbee. All I'm going to say, the football gods owe everybody. There needs to be some one-on-one open field between Tucker Kraft and Kirby Joseph, because that's one of the best safeties in the league against a tight end that gives zero you-know-whats. Yeah. That's going to be fun.
All I can think of is Josh Jacobs waving, who was it? Was it Jalen Johnson against the Bears? He's like, come on, I want to hit you, as they were going to the sideline.
Yeah.
Yet another trash talker.
It is true.
Yeah, and, McKinney had those words about the Lions earlier in the year when he thought they were running it up on, I can't remember, they ran a trick play. They actually, it was the first half, end of the first half, and they weren't rubbing it in. They were finishing off a team. But he saw it differently, and they do run trick plays. They ran that, Penny Sentinel was going to throw the ball against the Bears. They had an end around with him ready to throw it.
Have you seen that before?
Yeah. With a lineman?
No. I've never seen that before. I couldn't believe they called that.
I know. Well, if you're going to pick a lineman to do it, he's the one because he's so athletic. Yeah. But, they better not lose because or get blown out because the Lions are going to be running all kinds of stuff against them,
Oh, yeah.
So that'll be kind of interesting to see. I expect some trick plays in this game, too.
Xavier McKinney also going in Chicago was asked about DJ
Moore.
And he said, guy that walks off the field during the middle of the play, I don't really care about that guy. Like, Josh Jacobs talks trash. It used to be that was just Jair Alexander, right? But it's more than Jair Alexander now. And, I mean, there's genuine competition, I think, for who's the best trash talker on this team. Josh Jacobs, Xavier McKinney, who might have my vote, and then Tucker Kraft. I mean, they're
Keyshawn Nixon.
Keyshawn Nixon's up there, right?
Yeah. I mean, with his comments about the 49ers, like, hey, we're out with a quarterback. We had to play Malik. We don't care. We suited up and won. So, hey, yeah. It's pretty it's interesting, too.
Fun
like
for us.
Said. Oh, it's fun. I just like to sit back. I'm like, even in the locker room, I just want to grab my popcorn and just listen to him go. So it's just a lot of fun. But that's what it's about. It's rivalry games. That's the NFL. These are pros at the highest level, and they want to have that. Like, that's what they have fun doing. I don't personally pick on like other media guys. I don't know that maybe that'd be our I'm gonna start calling shots, picking on Ryan. People ask me
I'm
about
an easy
him.
target. I get it.
Yeah. He writes dirty. He doesn't do right. No, I'm just kidding.
Take low blows.
Take low blows. As we wrap this thing up, before we just go off the rails, any final things that you're thinking about, even maybe with special teams, especially the momentum that the Packers special teams have had, especially coming off this past week or so? Just is there anything that you guys are watching with that, or just anything at all with this game?
It's an indoor game. Both punters will probably do fine. Mm-hmm. Kickers, I don't think it'll be too big a deal. The Lions don't have Khalif Raymond. He's been put on IR. He's a returner, so that's something different. I don't know if Jameson Williams would be used. I don't know. I just know it's going to be physical.
Yeah,
should be.
Yeah. Any other final things? Go ahead.
Daniel Whelan doesn't have the benefit of that Lambeau Field wind to play off. I think he's done a tremendous job. Obviously, he forced, with James Washington, forced the muff pump just by getting it really high in the wind. I mean, the thing that he does best, and he does everything pretty well, he has this season, the thing he does best is the hang time. And when you have hang time late in the season at Lambeau Field, it can be treacherous for a returner. But indoors, it's a different game. So he won't be able to post one high in the sky and make it tough for a punt returner. But he kicking indoors, there's going to be some bombs off his foot. And Brandon McManus, the way that he has just instantly changed and ended this revolving door at the kicker position, it's pretty remarkable. Matt LaFleur said that he doesn't even look at the kick most of the time anymore because he knows it's going in. I think that's important. I think when a team has that kind of confidence in a kicker that they just didn't have last season, it permeates throughout the entire locker room. As Jordan Love said, all you got to do is get in his range. You got points. That's a boost.
It's good for a vet, too, to be in the situation. I mean, it could be Justin Tucker right now, which what's going on? I think that's just the whole thing. The NFL has been some head-scratching moments throughout the league for me.
I saw someone post, and I thought this was hilarious. So do you remember that time Justin Tucker wouldn't get out of the Chiefs' end of the field during warm-ups?
Before the NFC Championship game.
Was that NFC Championship
last
game?
year, yeah.
And, they were saying, this is why he cursed himself, by going and doing that, and now he can't hit a field goal to save his life.
No.
The best kicker the GOAT of kickers.
Yeah.
And now he can't even hit a extra point.
Yeah.
What do you do if you're the Ravens in that position where you have, other than Adam Vinatieri, has there ever been a better kicker than Justin Tucker in NFL history? I mean, maybe not, and that, but. And it's not like, it's any other position. He's like, Father Time. Well, he's still young enough that he should have some leg left, right?
I think it's kind of like what Mason Crosby went through that one year when he missed 10 kicks. And he missed 5 at Ford Field, right? Wasn't it 5 kicks?
Yeah.
And I just think that's what you have to do, and you have to just trust that the guy will find his swing again. But, man, it is weird that all of a sudden he can't hit a field goal.
I think it's always interesting. You can identify the organizations that are run the right way and those that just aren't. And usually the dividing line is the rash decision, making a quick decision, reactionary. You know, the Packers, how many times did they weather a bad season? 2 or 3 from Mason Crosby. And he, every single time, paid them back and then some. The Ravens are built the same way. That's another really well-run organization that, you know, they're lined up in the AFC North right next to the Cleveland Browns. A not well-run organization. You see the difference with organizations that are run well and not. They don't make reactionary decisions. They weather the bad times, and they have belief that if you keep continuity and you keep stability, usually that's going to prevail.
Yeah. Any other final words, guys? Are you excited to head to Detroit?
This is the most excited I've ever been to go to Detroit. I've been there many times. This is this game is, I think, as big as it gets in the regular season. I mean, this is a really fascinating game. The difference between this year and last year, to me, last year the Lions knew they were good. The Packers thought they could be good, but neither had really proven it yet. Right now, these are two heavyweights. They know who they are. These are two heavyweight teams going in for a heavyweight fight with, you know, the Packers' last breath of NFC North contention, and, you know, and see where the season goes. It doesn't get bigger in the regular season than this game.
Yeah, I always like going to Detroit. I don't know why, but it's just a great atmosphere for football. I've liked it since I was around when they played in the Silverdome, which was one of the most incredible places to cover a game.
What'd you like about it?
Oh, it's just enormous and loud,
really?
And I mean, it was rowdy. It was it was just like, you just can't believe that many people are in a place, and it wasn't like all glitter or anything. It's not like Jerry's place where there's 90,000 people, but do you really feel like there's 90,000? You know, they're spread out. There's a scoreboard. This was just a dome, you know, just like the Astrodome, you know, and there are just a million people in it, and there were some great games there. And I think Ford Field has kind of picked up where the Silverdome left off, and I just think the games are great, and I think the Lions fans, they always have so much hope, you know, so much hope, and they come and they're fired up, and then they, you know, they used to leave very disappointed, but, you know, they got a team to follow now. And so I think I'm kind of, I am excited about covering this game. I want to cover a really good game and two really good teams. We haven't seen that really probably since, I don't know, even Brazil. Like, that was two teams that we knew were both going to be really, really good.
But it was week 1, right?
It was week 1,
You don't have the implications of early December hovering over.
Right.
Yeah.
But that game was really good. There were haymakers just thrown right and left, you know, and it was like, who's going to score last? Yeah. And I wonder how it will be on Thursday.
I never got the Silverdome experience, so you said that Ford Field's similar, but is there any current NFL venues that remind you of that? I'm thinking of U.S. Bank Stadium because the open air press box, but I you know, is there any current NFL stadiums that give you that kind of feel?
So, you know, the Metrodome was like that before the Vikings moved to U.S. Bank. I just can't think of any place that was that cavernous. You know what? The L.A. Coliseum was kind of like that, except I felt like the Silverdome was a little more compact. The L.A. Coliseum, I think they can get 100,000 people in there, and there were some decent games there. But you know what part of it was that Barry Sanders played for the Lions, and so Barry Sanders just made the game exciting. You know, people were just out of their minds when he would make one of those moves, you know, and 6 guys would miss him, and he'd cut across the field, and that was really, I consider myself very lucky to have covered him.
I can only imagine. I know you grew up or like covering the team with the Lions with Barry Sanders. I just 0-16. That's pretty much where I started with the Lions, you know. But like you said, to see him now, it's, again, you talked about organizations doing things right, and Detroit has done that by far with the coach that fits the culture, with the players that fit what they want to
Personnel
do,
department has done
everything.
it. Their drafting has been
Oh, it's
outstanding.
been incredible.
Well, it is a great fan base. I have maybe it's because I'm a Mets fan. All right, I have.
Oh, you are? We didn't know
Yeah,
that.
I know. I don't broadcast that or anything. I have a certain appreciation for great fan bases that are long suffering. Detroit,
Yeah.
Buffalo, Cleveland. The fan bases that Chicago.
Yeah.
Their teams just pummel them in the teeth.
Yeah.
Every single year, and that is the reward you get for fandom, is pummeling in the teeth, and you still keep coming back for more. I have a lot of respect for that, and it is cool to see the Lions actually good. I mean, good for the city of Detroit, but I think it's not going to be long until it's easy to say if you're a Packers fan, like, oh, okay, God bless them, those Lions, they actually have a team. It's not going to be long until there's some intensity with this rivalry, and games like this is what really builds that. I mean, I think it's always going to be rivalry week when the Packers and Bears play because that's rivalry week in name only. You know what to expect that week.
Yeah.
The Packers are going to pummel the Bears whether it's Soldier Field, Lambeau Field, does not matter. This is how you actually create and forge a rivalry. And I think that's what we're seeing here.
Exactly. It's like, because I hate the one-sided. Like, you call it a rivalry, but it's one-sided. But when you split the games and different things happen, it makes it a lot more fun. Go ahead.
Yeah, you guys don't have the Packer experience when they were god-awful.
No,
I mean,
I don't.
they were the best team in football, on the planet for a decade. And then they were one of the worst organizations for 20 years. I mean, talk about a loyal fan base. They filled the stadium every week, and they were just bad.
Yeah.
There were some teams that were just awful, but they'd lose in all kinds of different ways, and just mediocre at times and really bad at other times. It wasn't until Ron Wolf came that they turned the corner, and now it's been completely different. But that was a long 20-year period.
Yeah. So now we get ready for Thursday again. It's kind of the talk of the town by far, and really across the NFL. People are looking forward to this big showdown.
Well-watched game, even though it's on Amazon. Can I rant on that?
Yes,
do.
you can rant on anything
Please
you
do.
like.
Give it to
I'm
us.
here for it.
Such
We got
crap
time.
that it has to be streaming. I mean, we'll get it locally. Everybody here gets it locally, and in Detroit. But my God, come on!
I know
mean, it's just doesn't Amazon dominate our lives enough as it is?
Especially in the month of December.
Yeah. But I know I can't think of any. I mean, there's some good games, but I can't think of many bigger than, especially what's at stake. And I can't think of any bigger than this game.
I don't know what the advertising revenue is, or I know the numbers. They're always bragging about the numbers, but I don't know.
No.
Does it make people want to buy Prime? I don't know.
I don't either. I don't either.
Follow the money. The more you can
it.
market,
That's
Yeah.
it.
the more you will.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say this. I have too many things from Amazon, so I'm not going to criticize them too much because who knows what might
You
happen.
need those deliveries to come through.
I need them deliveries,
Yeah.
right?
I know. I've seriously considered about canceling, just as a statement that they just dominate us, and I don't like, how these social or these big tech companies have all our information too. That's a bunch of crap as well.
Yes,
so
it is.
that I go on to Amazon and it's like, how did you know I want that? I mean, I'm talking about dog toys, and then all of a sudden there's dog toy ads on it. Think about that for a minute.
That is creepy when that happens.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Come for the football, stay for the spoon rants.
Well, can I just say, I love his football takes, but the hot takes,
I know.
these are so much better.
I need
I've
some
got
popcorn.
much more stuff to go over, but we'll save that for next week.
That's right. Yeah, guys, keep coming back. We're going to keep bringing these rants out. Thank you all so much for checking out the Green 19 podcast. For Ryan Wood, the ranty Tom Silverstein, I'm Dominique Yates. Have a good one.